Are we okay?
Yes.
Today we have Commissioner Jeff Culbertson here, and funny story, he told us when he came in, his father retired from
Jan's grocery
Jan's
store.
grocery
You guys
store.
remember this was Jan's grocery
Yeah.
store?
Yes.
Yeah, so taking us back in the day. Yeah, so it's pretty neat that we can be here doing our little meeting today, which is an information meeting about the county government. And Jeff used to be my commissioner for 4 years, and then he became somebody else's commissioner.
They moved the district.
They moved the districts, but prior to being a commissioner, 30 years in the county government. So pretty much knows what goes on in that old building there. And thank you for coming, joining us today to teach us about the county government.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So I'm gonna turn it over. Jeff's got something to read. We'll lead off with our questions and then take questions from the audience. And I just wanna note, unlike social media, this is not a one-issue meeting. This is not just about data centers. It's not a data center rally, although it is part of what the county commission does. We wanna make sure that we can give everybody a chance to listen and learn. Turn it over to you.
Okay.
Is there no mic?
Thank you very much.
No, Mike, you wanna, I think I can.
Or if you just stand, something.
Okay. You gotta talk loud, Jeff.
Okay.
Please.
I'll talk loud.
Please.
And when I start mumbling, just holler at me and I'll speak up again because I have a bad habit of mumbling. Good morning, folks. Thanks for having me. I'm just going to read the last couple of speeches that I gave, the notes that I used for that, because I think that'll probably bring up some things you might not have thought about, and it might cover some things that you had questions about. So I'm sure you've heard the saying, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat mistakes. Let's start back in 1950 when the counties only updated values on properties when they sold, which happens to be one of the new proposals to fix the current situation with property valuations. There have been several options presented to supposedly fix the rate of increased values. One is freeze the values. One is only increase the values at set 3% a year, or whatever the current cost of living is for that year, which I'm not against if it's just a temporary fix until a real problem can be ironed out. Another option offered is to go to a square foot model only, and etc. But like I said, if you don't learn from mistakes, you will almost certainly repeat them. So let's look at 1950 to 1980. A house that sold in 1950 for $30,000 is now worth $300,000 in 1980, but it's still valued on the county tax roll for $30,000 because it has never sold in 30 years. And now in 1980, another house that just sold for $300,000 is put on the tax roll at $300,000 value. So even though both houses we're talking about are both worth $300,000 in the 1980 market, one person is paying 10 times more taxes than the other guy. That's not fair. So reappraisal was born. The state stepped in and told all 105 counties they had to reappraise every parcel in the county and bring each property up to its current market value, so that all values were fair and equitable. To make sure we didn't get in the same situation again down the road where property values were not fair and equitable, a new set of laws were entered into our state constitution. Every year, a parcel's value is kept in line with current market values. This would guarantee you always paid your fair share of taxes based on the values compared to everyone else. The valuation system the state made for each county to use was pretty much the exact same system the appraisers use when they're hired to appraise your home, or if a bank gets an appraisal done on a property for a loan. The Marshall Swift-based process uses actually 5 houses just like yours that were sold in the last couple months, and they pick those 5 houses as identical as they can to find. Oh, there we go. Is that working?
Yeah.
So they pick those 5 houses as identical as they can to find what your value should be on your property. You don't have to do any improvements on your home to see the value increase, because your value is determined by what the other 5 comparable houses sold for. And we can spend hours talking about this process and define identical houses. Common argument is there are no other houses like mine. In some cases that is true. So they have to find similar houses. There's an entire segment in the appraisal process about that as well. There's a rating scale that scores attributes about your house compared to the other houses. The CDU rating, condition, age, square foot, materials used, quality, etc. are all taken into account. Location is another big element to find values on similar homes. Sometimes I hear people upset because the county used a comparable clean across the county. There are aspects to that to understand. The county appraiser builds neighborhood maps. It basically defines characteristics in neighborhood like average lot sizes, age of homes, average square foot, etc. so that they can find similar neighborhoods to yours. So if you get compared to a house clean across the county, it's still required to be in a similar type neighborhood based on the same criteria. All this is still subjective to plenty of criticism depending on where you are looking at it from. At the end of the day, the proof of whether it works or not is also built in the system. Argue all you want about the county came up with your value, how the county came up with your value, but when the houses sell, the state requires the sale price had to be within 10% of what the county value was. If your house sells for $100,000, the county had to have had between $90,000 and $110,000 on it for the county to be in compliance with PUD regulations. PUD is Property Valuation Department in Topeka. You run a report at the end of the year that shows the quality control compared for each sale price so that county appraiser had on each one of those houses. Our report for this year showed that the county appraiser has tried to keep in compliance with PUD regulations so far to the low side that most of his values were 85% of what they actually sold for. So if there are no mistakes, then the county has fair market value on your property, but your taxes are getting higher every year to an unsustainable level for you, then what's the answer? First, you have to understand how it all works before you can find a solution. The short answer is cut spending. Who sent you the tax bill? It must be their fault. Kill the messenger. Well, that's why the real problems persist and isn't getting addressed. But let's look at the knee-jerk reaction of the county needs to cut spending, which is what Senate Bill 13 was supposed to have fixed. Well, it didn't. Senate Bill 13 was the revenue neutral bill that the state passed. Why? Because that's not the problem. I'm not saying you don't have to be very frugal with the county budget. That was the first thing the county did. Over the last 30 years, Leavenworth County has been acting like they were under Senate Bill 13 all along. That's why Senate Bill 13 didn't do anything for Leavenworth County's problem. Everything in the bill we already did. It says the county needs to stay revenue neutral. That means only spend the same amount of money on the county budget this year as you did last year, and as you did 10 years ago, and as you did 20 years ago. In your household budgets, can you spend the same amount you did last year? It just doesn't work like that. So you can't have the same things you had last year. Something has to go. You just cut out the fat and only pay for what you absolutely need. And you can do that for a couple of years. But after a while, there's nothing left to cut unless you want to really start noticing important things missing. There is no way you can remain revenue neutral 10 years from now with the cost of living going up an average of 4% each year. That means it costs you 40% more in 2033 than it did in 2023 to have the same things that you did. If you did remain revenue neutral for a 10-year period, you would have to cut your budget and assets and services by 40%. This is unattainable. I understand people saying we need to cut the fat out of the county budget. The county started drastically cutting the county budget about 30 years ago. They stopped giving raises to employees. After years of no raises, they took it up a notch by cutting salaries. When someone would leave, the new hire was paid less. Problem with this county, you got way below comparable salaries across the board. People are leaving left and right to go to better paying jobs. They did a RIF, reduction in force, laid off employees. Problem with this is the remaining employees' workloads went up, so the service to the public went down. They revoked several holidays. This works well, cutting costs for your 24/7 employees get paid double time, and regular employees get paid when they're not working. They stopped paying saved up sick leave to people when they retire. They They stopped buying new cars. They stopped buying new cars and made all departments use old sheriff's cars after the sheriffs racked up 300,000 miles on them. They combined departments. They combined jobs. We used to have brush crews to keep the ditches muddy and cleared. They cut health inspectors. They cut out county doing perk tests. Perk test determines if your land can have a lagoon or a septic system. What's the big deal, you say? Well, a lagoon is 1/10 of the cost of a septic system. If you want to save money, you want your land to fail a perk test, so you get to put a cheaper lagoon in. If you don't want a sight or smell lagoon, you want your perk test to pass, so you can have an underground septic system. We've noticed more failed lagoons and laterals since the county stopped doing the perk test. My point is, everywhere we cut comes with consequences. When do the consequences outweigh the savings? That's where we are today. Every department has cut and cut until a public outcry for that service or lack of service is loud enough to stop cutting back one step. We have reached a minimum acceptable level of services in every department. Every single county department is now severely underfunded, some more than others. Road and bridge, for example. There are 150 bridges in the county. A bridge lasts about 50 years. So to be responsible, we should be replacing 3 bridges every year. But to try and lower the budget, the county has cut the bridge fund to an irresponsible point, and we only replace about 1 bridge a year. The easiest can to kick down the street is a budget line item that doesn't show up right now. No one will notice this fund is short for years down the road. Well, guess what? We are now years down the road. The county used to blade your driveway or clear snow for 1 hour per taxpayer per year. We used to put in driveway tubes. We used to stripe the roads in-house. We used to spray dust control chemicals on gravel roads when we'd have detours. We tried cutting back on mowing ditches this last summer, and calls were non-stop complaining about it. There's also a safety factor problem with not mowing the ditches. You can't see oncoming traffic when you're coming out of the driveway. More serious consequences, saving money. Most recently, some things we did to save money is stop paying $100,000 almost a year for several county departments, including council on aging. After spending almost $1 million in rent, we now pay all the utilities. We now have a permanent home for them at Cushing. We also are going to rent out the 3rd and 4th floor that pays all the utilities and the entire building, and it covers repairs and maintenance on the building for all the county departments. So you went from being a tenant, paying $100,000 a year in rent, to being a landlord now. We did the reverse with our juvenile detention center to save money. It was costing you about $350,000 a year to maintain the juvenile detention center. A lot of times it would only have 1 prisoner in it. So it was costing us more than it was providing. So the sheriff contracted with Wyandotte County to now hold your juveniles, and the savings is tremendous. This list goes on and on. What I'm trying to make sure everyone understands is that we didn't just start cutting the budget lately. Way before Senate Bill 13 was passed, we had already set our target to remain revenue neutral every single year. In reality, Leavenworth County has cut the budget so much over the years, we have the 7th lowest mill levy, county mill levy, in the state of Kansas. There are only 6 counties in 105 counties in Kansas that you could pay less county property taxes. And I know you don't hear that. You hear all these other figures that we have the highest taxes. That is a lie. Leavenworth County, and I'm talking about the county mill levy. We don't control the school mill levy. We don't control the cities. We don't control the townships. The county mill levy that we control is the 7th lowest in the state of Kansas. Whatever, let's tree control, lowered for 4 or 5 years. All this cutting has been done to try and lower your taxes, but your taxes are still too high. That's because that's not the real problem. Even if we drastically cut the county budget, which makes up about 28% of the average person's tax bill, say you cut the county budget in half, you're only going to cut your bill about 14%. Cutting the lowest portion of your taxes is not the answer. The real problem is Kansas puts too much weight on property tax. There are 3 main sources of taxation: property income and sales tax. Kansas puts about 90% of the weight on the county budgets on the property tax. 0 on income tax, and almost none on sales tax. The least fair way to tax is property tax. It only taxes a few people, so a few have to pay a lot. Income tax and sales tax include a lot of people, so a lot of people would just pay a little. The property tax system does not work for Leavenworth County. The state actually came up with a Band-Aid fix using this exact theory. It is called the LAVTR, Local Ad Valorem Tax Relief. It shifts some of the weight off of property tax onto sales tax, so you can relieve your property taxes by more people paying sales tax. There's a state law that says the state was supposed to pay each county the LAVTR funds every year to help lower property tax. The state legislators saw the problem of too much weight on property tax, so they came up with this LAVTR as a temporary relief to offset your property tax. Problem is, the state ran out of money, and they decided to keep counties' LAVTR money. This would be about this was an older thing, it would be about $4 million for Leavenworth County a year. But they vote every year not to follow the law. This was before they just changed the law. So when I brought the LAVTR up, nobody even knew about it. And so when I took it to Topeka, they said, well, we got a report from Kansas Policy Institute that says the LAVTR didn't work. So that's what they used to make a law that said they don't have to pay the LAVTR anymore, which was a fake report. It was working. We had to raise our mill levy 9 mills when they did away with the LAVTR. But the state doesn't ask the counties or the cities because they don't work for you. Let's see. Using a property tax system is especially bad for Leavenworth County because, like I said, 65% of Leavenworth County is property tax exempt. That means only 35% of us are paying all the bills. One of the bigger problems for Leavenworth County is we don't receive a pilot check. A pilot check is a payment in lieu of taxes. A check the federal government writes for exempt federal property. $3 billion valuation on Fort Leavenworth is not paying any property tax. The VA and the federal prisons also hugely contribute to this problem. So everyone else that's paying taxes agrees to pay more to make up for them. The federal government understands that without a pilot check to replace lost taxes, a lot of cities and counties could not afford to stay in business. So they write a pilot check to compensate those cities and counties. Problem is, they only write those pilot checks for Department of Interior facilities, not Department of Defense facilities like Fort Leavenworth. For the last 4 years, I've been working with DC and our legislators to get a law change to include Department of Defense facilities. This would mean about a $30 million a year pilot check to Leavenworth County. That would cut everyone's property taxes in half. This isn't about thanking our military. This isn't about not thanking our military for their service. This is about the federal government being a good neighbor. We totally understand the importance of having the fort in our community. The jobs, the money spent in our community are vital. But the system the state makes us use, property taxes, does not translate federal property into county budget at all. House Bill 79 would have drastically reduced Leavenworth County's property taxes by at least half. Right now, only about 33,000 parcel owners are paying all the bills. If you go to an income tax and sales tax, hundreds of thousands of people will be paying the bills. When you spread the bills out among few people, they have to pay a lot. If you spread it out among more people, they won't pay as much. I think the numbers will surprise you. We could completely eliminate property taxes statewide by increasing income tax sales by 2%. That's the difference in the budgets. 2% income tax is equal to all the property tax. So it doesn't take much. Only a 1% increase in earnings tax locally would cut Leavenworth County property taxes in half, but it takes state legislation to do this. It can't be done at the county commission level, or we would have already done it. Another way to drastically lower taxes is broadening your tax base. More people help pay the bills. Increased number of homes helps lower taxes. It's hard to see this because the cost of living expense is still outpacing new construction in our county. Your taxes keep going up every year, and they're adding more houses. What you don't see is your taxes would have gone up even more without those. There's also a misconception that more houses cost
existing residents more because they stretch our infrastructure too thin. Even though this is true to a certain extent, it's not true here. If you're the only house in your tax district, you will pay 100% of all the bills. If another house gets built in your tax district, now you're only paying 50% of the bills. You get 10 houses in your tax district, you're gonna pay 10% of the bills. The average new home value today is $480,000. That's a lot more tax money than when these original reports were put out saying that it wouldn't pay for itself. Adding residential housing, we are doing now. Building the new bridge will take, oh wait, I missed one. 3 like to come to these chairs. Helping support residential construction is something we can do at the local level. Another way to economic development can lower taxes, adding commercial and industrial business. Commercial pays a lot more in taxes than residential. But to do that, you have to have a location where entities want to be. Access is the key. Businesses need lots of residential rooftops close to fill their jobs, and they need to be close to major transportation hubs. We don't have railroads, river traffic, or airports in Leavenworth County, or even a major highway connection for the most part. If we could fix this problem, industry would come. If they were to build a bridge connecting Eisenhower to 152 Highway, making Quick Trip in Lansing 6 minutes from the airport, we would become more financially independent. Adding residential housing we are doing now. Building the new bridge will take a while to get done, but the most important way to fix high property taxes is for the state legislators to shift the weight off of property tax and onto income and sales tax. Please ask your legislators for a blue ribbon audit on the taxation system at the state level. Another aspect of this is to make sure the income and sales tax is used 100% to relieve property taxes, not just an added tax. It needs to be built into the bill and the Constitution so it doesn't just end up being an added tax. The county continues to cut as much as we can and come up with new ideas to save tax money, but they are all small measures that can't make much difference on your tax bill. It's your county budget. The county is 100% service related. All we do is turn every penny of your tax money into assets and services for you. Anything we cut is your assets and your service. Stop asking to cut your own services. Start asking to fix the real problem. The real fix has to be done by you at the state and federal level. Help our state legislators understand the real problem. If we don't all understand, we will continue to pay higher property taxes. So in summation, what I'm talking about is pass a bill like Senate Bill 8 that caps appraisals, get a pilot check from the feds, make the state return to LABTR funds, pass a bill like House Bill 79 that goes to a 1% earnings tax instead of so much on property tax, and build that bridge. The one common denominator in all these solutions is they can only be done at the state and federal level. The county does not have the authority to do any of these. Otherwise, we surely would have already done it. So one of the things I was going to talk about is one of the things that drive your taxes up is unfunded mandates. The state will come out with an unfunded mandate, meaning the county has to do that and spend money on it, but the state's not going to pay for it. The local taxpayers have to pay for it. They pass state unfunded mandates every year. Another thing they do is pass exemptions. Every time they pass an exemption on a group, this is a list of all the things that are exempt in Kansas. It's 27 pages long. Every time they add one of these things, so they've exempted motor vehicles owned by Kansas resident that is actively in military service. Your taxes went up a little bit when they did that. They exempted recreational vehicles owned by Kansas resident that's full-time regular military service. Your taxes went up a little bit when they did that. All household goods and personal effects not used for production of income. Your taxes went up a little bit when they exempted that group. Every time they exempt another group, you have to pick up the difference. The tax money didn't go away, it just shifted to somebody else. 27 pages. They passed a couple dozen of these last year, and nobody knows it. Nobody pays attention. So every time they pass another exemption, your taxes go up. One of the bigger problems is putting the wrong people in office. So I'm sure you guys got a bunch of these the last couple weeks in the mail. Half of these were lies, and you guys probably didn't even know it. there's groups that put these out are the lobbyists for Topeka, and they tell everybody how to vote. The lobbyists tell your state legislators how to vote. You ever seen when you were a kid, did you see I'm just a bill, just a lonely old bill, you know what I'm talking about, the after school
Schoolhouse
special?
Rock. Schoolhouse
So that's it, Schoolhouse Rock. So I always thought that must be how it works. The people go to their state legislators and say, hey, we think this needs to be a law. So they take the bill to Topeka and they run it through the House and the Senate and the governor, and it becomes a law. That's not how it works. And I don't know if anybody in this room knows how it works. They don't work for you. They work for the lobbyists. Koch brothers, Kansas Policy Institute, Americans for Prosperity. If you learn who the bad actors are, then you could just look at these and say, well, this is from Kansas Policy Institute. It's a lie. So I don't know how to get people to do that. I don't know. I've spent 8 years trying to explain to people what the problems are and what you got to do to fix it. And I think 80% of the public just doesn't care because they don't do any homework to see, is this a lie? Is this true? It takes a lot of work, and nobody wants to put that much work into it. They're busy living their lives. I get it. I want to get back to it in 21 more Wednesdays. But I don't know how to get everybody to understand what the problems really are. Terry Lopez. You.
So, Representative Gregory here served in the House of Representatives. And respectfully, I totally disagree that anybody told me or my party how to vote. I had lobbyists who came up and tried to convince me of what their position was, which I used that information. My last question was always, who opposes you? I invited that lobbyist to come to me, and I used that information to play devil's advocate to get as much information from them as I could.
Yeah.
And between the two, they saved me a lot of research time, and I had to research what neither one of them answered in my questions. Usually that was through a caucus question. But I guarantee you, no one ever told me from either side how to vote, and they would not tell a state legislator how to vote because they would lose their privilege as a lobbyist. So maybe they contributed to me, but the one time that I had a lobbyist infer that he'd appreciate my vote some way, and I had that check in my hand, I handed it back and I said, are you telling me how to vote? Oh, no, Representative, no, Representative, we would just like to show you our facts.
Yeah.
So I know people love to say that the lobbyist is telling them how to vote. They have authority, they can stand against their majority leader, they can stand against their speaker, or their Senate president, and we have done that many times. My caucus was the 150 caucus. We were the Tea Party, we were the kickback against the Obama election, and it was herding cats trying to tell us what to do. No one ever told us how to vote.
So LAVTR, let's use that for an example. Does everybody in this room know what LAVTR was? The Local Ad Valorem Tax Relief Fund. That's where legislators 50 years ago said, hey, you can't make enough money off property tax, so we're gonna help you out. We're gonna give you some sales tax. So they were giving Leavenworth County about $4 million a year in sales tax through the LAVTR fund. When I started as a commissioner 8 years ago, one of the first things I did was bring back the LAVTR to light because nobody even knew about it. They weren't paying it. The state stopped paying it to the counties. Nobody knew what the LAVTR even was and that it was still a law that they were supposed to still be paying. So I took it to Topeka and I said, you guys are supposed to pay this. And they said, well, we got a report that said it didn't work. So they used a fake report from a lobbyist showing that the LAVTR did not work. Did anybody in this room tell your legislator to stop paying LAVTR? One person.
I told my lobbyists, I told my entire county caucus to vote in favor of returning LAVTR to us.
Exactly. Not one person said stop paying it. Not one person told their state legislator, we don't want you to pay us LAVTR. Not one. But what did they do? They stopped paying LAVTR. They passed a law saying no more LAVTR. Why? Not because anybody in this room told them to. So who did they work for? Why did they kill the LAVTR? Because the Kansas Policy Institute and they referenced this.
Not because of Kansas Policy Institute. Kansas Policy Institute may have been their excuse, but they did not manage their own budget.
Yeah.
And we were the scapegoat.
Right.
But every one of those legislators were responsible for their own vote. And in my humble opinion, every one of them stabbed us in the back. To hear a representative say they wanted us to pay them $500 million, I mean, like they're the representative of the state position. They were elected to serve us. They were elected to represent us, and they did not. But it wasn't because the KPI paid them or gave them marching instructions.
No, it's because they used the KPI report to say it doesn't work. LAVTR doesn't work. And I said, why do you think it didn't work? Because here's the report. They furnished it to me. So I tore that report apart, and I said, this KPI report is fake because they inserted the values when they should have been talking about increases in the actual taxes itself. Valuations have gone crazy. Everybody knows that. The market has gone crazy. They used that to say it wasn't working. It was a fake report from KPI as the excuse our state legislators used to pass a law to eliminate LAVTR. Not one of their constituents told them to do it. Not one that I know of.
Okay,
Yep.
There's a lot going on there. I would just like to get away from doom and gloom for a minute. What good happened in your past 8 years? What do you think that the county, serving the citizens of the county, did right in the past 8 years?
So one big one would be the Council on Aging. We used to have a nursing home out on Broadway. They closed that down. We sold the county sold the building for $100,000. Then they needed a place for Council on Aging to go, so they rented it back for $80,000 a year. In 10 years, they paid $800,000 in rent. So when I started, I said, that's a bad idea. You guys are paying rent with your tax money. So we found them a home. We got Cushing for free. We used federal funds, not local tax dollars, to remodel it. And so now, instead of you paying almost $100,000 in rent, you're a landlord. We rent out the 3rd and 4th floor. That pays for that building. It's self-sufficient. That's a big thing we did. More recently, Fort Leavenworth was using the ambulance service that you guys paid for. So it costs Leavenworth County $8 million a year to run the ambulance service. We get about $6 million a year reimbursed through insurance companies and people paying their bills. But $2 million a year, every year, is a loss. Me and you cover that loss with our property taxes. So we have to supplement the EMS department to keep an ambulance service going in Leavenworth County. If me and you don't pay that $2 million a year, they go out of business. I went and talked to Fort Leavenworth, and I said, look, we have a contract with you to supply ambulances for free. That was a previous board. The contract's coming up in 3 years. I'd like to work on something that can sustain our service to the people that are not paying property tax. So we would need a pilot check. If you're not paying property tax, you're not helping us cover that $2 million a year. They failed to understand that. We went back and forth for 3 years. I pointed out Fort Riley. I said, look at Fort Riley. They were supplying, Riley County was supplying Fort Riley with the ambulance service. They asked them to pay $1 million a year to cover the costs. Since they're not paying property tax, Fort Riley said, no, we'll do it on our own. Today, Fort Riley pays $6 million a year for their ambulance service. They could have let the county do it for $1 million. I told Fort Leavenworth that, showed them that. They told me nobody else in the country is paying for ambulance service. So I sent them 176 examples of IGSAs that are doing the exact same thing. Communities are charging the base for ambulance service. They came back and said, well, we'll pay you $350,000. So we said, okay, that's better than it's better than what we were getting before. Then they go, well, wait a minute. If we do pay you $350,000, you have to build us a new ambulance station on a post, 2 ambulances and full staff for $350,000 a year. So I said, it costs $1 million for an ambulance. I said, we built the station on Metropolitan. It's 60 seconds from anywhere on the fort. It's like having an ambulance station on the fort. but they were not happy with that. So they said, well, we'll just go out on our own. So today, they signed a contract for $7.4 million for their ambulance service. We were gonna do it for $350,000. That's the stuff that doesn't make any sense to me. But what it does, getting back to the good point, is now me and you don't have to hire more people to cover Fort Leavenworth. We don't have to have an extra ambulance to cover Fort Leavenworth. So it's saving you money. I wish it wouldn't have went that way. It doesn't make any sense to me why they went that way, but that's the way it worked out. So it still worked out in your favor. We're gonna keep ambulance service in business a little bit longer. Next, I'm talking to the VA, the federal prison, the state prison, and St. Mary's campus, because they're other big users of our ambulance service that you're paying for, that they're not paying anything for. So we're gonna talk to them next.
You got a question?
Yeah, I want to say roads. I think in the last 8 years, the road conditions here in rural Leavenworth County have improved
Mhm.
significantly.
That's true, and Doug has a lot to do with that. Doug used to be
Yeah,
the
he's
road
the
and bridge
road
director.
guy.
And Doug was on the board. We've paved more roads than we paved in the last 30 years.
Yeah, it's a real improvement.
Yep, County Road 30, County Road 1, I mean, there's a lot of improvements to the roads that we've done, especially in my district. They haven't paved a road in my district in 30 years, and we paved 6 last year before. So that's a big one.
So we're gonna open it up to questions?
Sure. Doug?
So, is anybody working on a pilot check from Core Civic, being as it's going to the federal government?
That's right, DHL.
The Core Civic came to the county first and said, hey, to get around this Biden thing, we can work through you. And so they offered us the same deal that they offered the city. We couldn't do it because we don't have home rule. They get sued all the time. If you don't have home rule, you'll lose your butt with places that sue a lot. So we said, we can't take this on. The taxpayers will be on the hook for all the lawsuits. But the city can, because cities have home rule. So I told the city, Core Civic's gonna come to you, they're gonna offer you this. You basically have 2 choices. You can let them build unimpeded and take their money, $8 million a year, the first year. Or you can tell them no, they're gonna sue you in a federal court. They're a federal contracted agency, so you're gonna lose, and then they're not gonna offer you anything. And they are our biggest taxpayer in Leavenworth County. Core Civic paid $1 million a year in taxes. If they deed the property to a federal agency, they're exempt from taxes because our state legislators exempted federal property from taxes. So if you don't let them build, they're gonna not only not give you the $8 million the first year, they're gonna exempt the $1 million they pay a year in taxes. And that's exactly what they did. So,
My name is Carolyn Tillotson, and I also served in the legislature. I believe Terry when she says no one bought her vote, no one bought my vote, but I certainly knew plenty of legislators whose vote was bought.
yeah.
And all of us knew when a certain bill would come up, we knew who would be for it. So the truth is somewhere in between.
How do we
Some
fix
of us
that?
are clean, some of us aren't.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm saying. That's why I wanted Mike to get into Topeka, Mike Stevens, because he wouldn't be a yes man. He would be a thorn in their side. I don't know what to do. I don't know how you replace enough of the ones that do what the lobbyists want with ones that wouldn't. I don't know how you get to that point when especially only 17% show up to vote. Another big problem we got is the lack of turnout. These entities, these lobbyist groups I'm talking about, they thrive in this low voter turnout environment. They can get anybody elected because only 17% of us show up to vote. So it don't take a whole lot to get somebody put in one of those positions. I don't know how to fix that really. Okay, did you have something,
I
Sherry?
was just gonna add, before we move on to Q&A, that one of the good things that I think the county has done over the last 7 or 8 years is the update and the kind of like the publication of a comprehensive plan. So we had an old one, a new one.
Hadn't been updated since.
Oh, yeah. So I mean, it was a big undertaking,
Yeah,
but,
when Doug started as first.
yeah, I mean, the subdivision
updated
rules and
Hadn't been
the
updated in
land
20
use,
years.
the table, of
Yep.
use, I mean, all that stuff kind of went into that project,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
that was a big deal.
And a lot of people don't really understand that if they would have done it 20, 30 years ago, they could have changed the zoning map too. But today, you can't change the zoning map without a public hearing on every single property that you change the zoning on. So when we changed the land use map, that's really what we're going by. That's what we're using as a zoning map, but it's not the official zoning map. So there's kind of a conflict between the zoning map and the land use map. Ron?
Yeah, I need to leave, but before I do, I just want to thank you for everything you've done for this county. I believe what you're saying and what your presentation is, and I wish you would run for governor.
That'd be a really bad idea.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. You have a question?
Mr. Culbertson, with the Chiefs coming to Wyandotte County, where do you see ways Leavenworth County can benefit? I know it's their entity, but how can we mitigate our structures on roads or infrastructure that's gonna come by just barnacling?
Yeah.
And how can we mitigate traffic congestion? I commute to Olathe right through 2440.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be in a nightmare for the next
You
2
are.
years. I would love to see an I-70 bridge in the south part of the county help alleviate Leavenworth's congestion into what's about to happen.
So the 152 bridge that I was talking about, are you
Yeah.
familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
That would directly play into the Chiefs Stadium where
Yes,
it's
sir.
going. We proposed that. We had investors from New York that were gonna build it, make it a toll bridge. It would make you, if you were a quick trip in Lansing, you could get to the airport in 6 minutes. Secretary of Transportation has lobbyists too.
Sure.
And it did not make the cut list because there were contractors that already had their fingers in the pie 10 years ago of straightening out Highway 5 or replacing Centennial Bridge. So you and me are not on their agenda. They're doing things that they wanted them to do 10 years ago. But it's a lot like the DeSoto plant in the south end of the county. It's seeing a lot of growth in needed infrastructure and roads and bridges and stuff, and that's something that definitely has to be addressed. So, and we got that.
Well, who's our rep to Mark? I mean, is that where these things would take?
Mid-America Regional Council?
Yeah.
I'm one of them. There's several. There's 2 commissioners on it. Doug was on it. You got a question, Teresa?
More of a comment, on registered deeds, and you're not gonna stop the growth. I recorded 23 plats and surveys a week ago Thursday. In South County, if they have 10 acres, they're cutting it up into 2.5. If they have 5 acres, they're cutting it up. It's
So-
sold and chopped up, right and left.
And another adversarial group that I have that doesn't like me is because they think I'm pro turning Leavenworth County into Kansas City. So I'll tell you a little story. When I was 10 years old, I was working with my grandpa putting up hay, and these guys showed up in a truck and they wanted my grandpa to sign a petition because Walt Wagner owned 80 acres behind my grandpa. He wanted to chop it into 5-acre subdivision. My grandpa said, well, who owns that land? And they said, well, Walt Wagner owns it. And my grandpa said, well, he ought to be able to do whatever he wants to with his own property then. So they left. And I said, well, Grandpa, we don't want subdivisions. We live in the country. And this was 50 years ago. And he said, son, if you don't want to see us turn into Kansas City, you need to move about 3 counties west of here. Because we are in the next ring of the metropolitan area of Kansas City. Everybody wants to live out of the city, but work in the city, and be close enough to drive to their restaurants and their doctors, but live in the country. That's Leavenworth County. That's what we are. We are a bedroom community to Kansas City. So we've been trying to do that in as organized fashion as possible. But that's absolutely true. We cannot stop it. Most of these people moved out of Kansas City and they bought 2 acres around the south end of the county. And they got 80 acres of corn on one side and 100 acres of cows on the other side, and they want to keep it that way. Us 4 and no more is what I call them. They got their 2 acres, but they want to control everybody's land around them. It doesn't work like that. I wish it did, but it doesn't.
Land rights.
What can you tell us about the bicentennial bridge? What's the status on that?
They're going to replace it. It's on schedule, I think, in 3 years to get started. Yeah, maybe 2 now. Yeah, they're going to replace it.
So I'm hearing you talking about all of these issues, which I've been following along a long time. Do you think the state of Kansas needs the citizen referendum to line up our representatives so that they know that we do not like what they're doing right now?
Something like that.
maybe we'll start a petition for a referendum.
But how do you get enough people interested to actually go do it? 17%?
Well, I would have to use some of your notes.
Yeah. But you see what I'm saying? It's only
I do.
17% show
Yes,
up,
I
so
know.
I gotta guess that's about all you're gonna get to do something like that. I don't know. I wish I knew the answer to that, or I wouldn't be quitting.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the saddest thing. I actually thought I'd probably be commissioner the rest of my life. I'm related to everybody in my district, so I think it'd be pretty easy.
Yeah.
But I got to a point where I've seen this ship is going down. They have passed revenue neutral 2.0. That's gonna start next year. That's where you voters get to decide whether the county can raise their budget even $1. You vote on it. If the county says, hey, we gotta buy a new ambulance, you say, nope, you're not raising your budget. You're gonna start to see some serious degradation of services starting next year. Probably no snow removal will be one of the first things. How are you gonna get to work when the county doesn't blade your snow anymore? That's gonna be one of the first things cut. Revenue neutral 2.0 was authored by Masterson and Karen Tyson and the LCC group. Do you know who the LCC group is? Everybody here know who the LCC is? You should. They are who run Topeka.
Who is it?
Legislative Coordinating Council. It's Ty Masterson, Dan Hawkins, the group of the people that put this stuff out. They passed revenue neutral 2.0 in the Senate and the House. It only got vetoed by the governor. If Masterson's governor next year, he's the author of revenue neutral 2.0, so what do you think's gonna happen? Revenue neutral 2.0 is gonna be the end of the county budgets, the city budgets, the schools are gonna go bankrupt. It's gonna get really bad, people, and that's why I'm out. Doug?
So, RHIDs.
Riz?
City of Tonganoxie, you know, they've got several hundred houses that are not paying taxes. Well, the Tonga School District just raised their mill levy, 1 mil. And also, we've got 2 pet food plants down there that are not paying taxes. So we didn't gain a whole lot there.
And who exempted the Rids from paying taxes? Wasn't the county
Right, that's what
commissioners,
I'm saying.
it was the
You're
state,
talking
your
about
state
the race to
representatives.
the bottom.
Absolutely.
Now every developer has to ask for the taxes to go back to them instead of the county or the school.
Yep. I brought up, why can't we do rids for individuals? Why can't somebody do a one lot, one house rid?
Yeah.
If we're gonna supplement people paying taxes, let's do it to our taxpayers, not corporations that don't need the break.
We're probably gonna have 500 houses in the county that we get no taxes for, they go to the developer.
Yep.
Taxes go to the developers.
And your state legislators passed that. And nobody knew it. Nobody paid attention.
And it was for western Kansas,
Yeah.
was the intent of it.
Rural opportunities.
It works good in some situations. So when Greensburg had the big tornado, was it Greensburg?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went out there with GIS because they couldn't figure out where the houses were. It was just one big pile of debris. So I said, well, let's use the meters for the gas meters on everybody's house has a GPS address. So we could at least figure out where the houses were. So I was out there for months doing cleanup and helping them with GIS mapping. That's the first I heard of RIDS. The problem with Greensburg is it's in the middle of nowhere. There's no support for economic anything. So that they would build a house that cost $150,000 to build. And as soon as it was done, it was worth $15,000 is what it would sell for. A community can't rebuild when that's the situation. When the value of a brand new house is 10% of what it cost you to build it. So RIDS were the only way Greensburg could come back. So I agree with RIDS in certain situations, but in thriving communities like around Kansas City, it's just corporate welfare, in my opinion.
And after the contractor has already built the infrastructure, coming and asking for reimbursement on what he's already spent.
Yep. And,
Not right.
and I went to Topeka to fight our legislators on that, and it was to no avail. So
Is there a way to give our comprehensive plan more teeth to prevent very niche carve-outs of those RHIEs? Can we do something that gives our county a little more protection and requirements?
Well, that's what I was talking about before when I said our land use plan is not our zoning map. A zoning map has legal teeth in a court of law.
Okay.
A land use map does not.
Okay.
Land use map is an idea, zoning map is a law. We can't update our zoning map without going through a public hearing on every single
Right.
property, so that's where we're kind of stuck in the middle. I wish we could, but it doesn't work that way. Any other questions? Yep.
So
So I live in the southern part of the county, and we are seeing, as Lois said, all of these farm fields being bought up by developers and putting in large volumes of homes. The problem that I'm seeing is all surrounding these properties, they used to be rural, they used to be county, the city comes in, it becomes annexes, it becomes part of the city, we have county roads. There's no, you already said, we don't have the money to redo the county roads to take care of what's going to happen when they put in all of these homes. How do we address, because we've gone to some of the county and the maintenance, and they said they're not gonna fix the roads until we have traffic accidents or fatalities.
Yep.
That's just wrong.
Another problem that I was getting at between the difference between property tax, sales tax, and income tax. Right now, 10 people driving on a road, only 2 out of 10 people driving on our roads are paying for those roads. 2 out of 10. 6 of those 10 people are exempt from paying property tax. 2 out of 10 of those people don't live in Leavenworth County. They live somewhere else, but they work in Leavenworth County. So they're driving on our roads and bridges, but they don't pay property tax in Leavenworth County. So me and you, the 2 people out of the 10, are paying for the road maintenance and the bridges for the 8 people out of 10 that are not paying. That's exactly what's going on. We've got to get off of a property tax system to fix problems exactly like that. If you go to income tax and sales tax, everybody pays. Even if they don't live here, they're passing through, they're paying sales tax. If they work here, but they don't live here, they'll pay income tax. So Leavenworth County cannot operate on property tax alone. We are 65% property tax exempt. 35% of you are covering all the bills. So that automatically makes your property taxes almost 3 times higher than they should be.
Well, I was gonna hit home on the sales tax issue as well, because if we do get to the revenue neutral 2.0, that bill becomes a lot more, even more critical than it has been in the past. But just kind of some feedback, don't take this the wrong way, but I do think there's some opportunity in the way that the county presents and sales information to the public. So
We need a PR person.
I understand,
Everything I
because
told you, did I say anything that you guys didn't know?
No.
Probably a little. I mean, wasn't there some things I said that you didn't know? We need a PR person to get that word out. I agree.
Next job.
We tried that a couple times, and budget cuts,
Well,
first thing you cut is a PR person.
I know, but what I wanna say though is that it's really hard for every person in the county to go watch the 2-3 hour long
Yep.
county commission
Yep.
meeting,
I
the
wouldn't
planning
recommend it.
commission meeting.
Yeah, I would not recommend it.
You know, like wade through all the budget stuff.
Absolutely.
And you know, some of the counties, they put together some pretty nice presentations, some little videos. I mean, if we get to the point where citizens are voting on the budget increase, I mean, all of that becomes very important.
Yep. How do
It's
you-
also
how do you make it
interesting
transparent?
that the county attorney has a
PR person.
PR person,
Yep.
but the county itself does not.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's so important
Yep.
in
And
the messaging back to the community as to whether you get the support.
You're not
that's
offending me,
needed.
because you're
I
preaching
know.
to the choir. I
Right,
said
I
we need a
know.
PR person, and they
I
said budget
know,
cut, sorry.
And I know you're on the way out, but I mean, those things are opportunities for improvement for
I
the
think that's
county.
the only way it's gonna work from here on out with revenue neutral 2.0, is people are gonna have to know, why do you want that extra
Yes.
$100,000 this year? The PR person is the only one that's gonna get that message out there, so I think a PR person is gonna have to come hand in hand with this revenue neutral 2.0.
And
So what's
Mike,
that gonna cost?
Which thing?
To put that
The
on
PR
the ballot?
person?
No,
Oh.
you're gonna have to put that on the ballot.
Yeah, the revenue neutral
Election.
2.0 is
You
another
also-
state unfunded mandate
so
that'll cost you
right
guys
now you're-
$60,000 a year.
So you're sending out postage right now for the revenue neutral, whether you're revenue neutral or not, you still
Yep.
gotta mail that out.
Yep.
And nobody understands, a lot of people don't understand that.
Yep.
They think it's a tax bill.
Yes, they do.
Yep,
And
it's
it's not,
another.
it's just information. And
Yep.
It's a waste of money.
Yep, and like a PR person could explain, that notice that went out, I got more calls yelling at me about us raising their taxes. And I said, first of all, the thing that raised on there is your value. The county doesn't control putting current market value on your house. The state makes us do that. If you look at the county line item, we stayed revenue neutral this year. So we actually went down. But they yell at me because they saw their valuation go up because they don't understand it.
There you go.
And Micah might be just
The PR guy for.
Might just be on that salary for the AG, but I think he is on his own. He's doing a really good job of showing up at all events, and he does his best to take pictures of what's going on with the community and other elected officials and, you know.
We get a lot of feedback though that it's a waste of money. That's the most feedback I get about Micah is he's a waste of money of our taxpayer dollars. I disagree because I think that's what it takes. That's how things work. You have to have a PR person to let the people know what's going on. Most of the time when people yell about transparency, they're like, you're not being transparent. It's because they didn't get the information. Not that we weren't being transparent. We dumped it on the internet, we dumped it in the newspaper, we did all these things, but they just happened to miss it. So they think, you're not being transparent. I'm like, it's because we don't have a PR person explaining everything to you in a lot better format.
So can you wrap up? We're running out of time.
Okay.
If you're willing to stay after, that would be
Sure.
great, if you
Yep.
need to talk to you about it.
I'm in no hurry.
One last thing, can you wrap up by talking about what can we do to work with the commission to help out, to help us all rise together?
The reason that I'm retiring is because for 8 years, I have tried to get the public, the general public, to understand how Topeka works. They're gonna have to do some homework. They're gonna have to dig into the internet and talk to people and figure out who's lying to you and who's not. That's the only thing I see saving everything we've talked about is the general public to turn from a 17% turnout to an 80% turnout. I think that's the only thing that's gonna fix anything.
Can I qualify that though? It needs to be an 80% informed turnout.
And that's the other problem. The flip side of that is, so you make everybody vote, you know, some people have kicked that around, make it a law that you have to vote. That's a terrible idea because people that don't do their homework will vote for the wrong people. So, yeah, catch 22.
I'll just ask this. What's the approximate age level of citizens that talk to you? Because I think that's a big problem. I think there's a delineation of a generation
Over
who
40.
knows what's happened. or
Over
has-
40.
Yeah.
Over 40. Nobody under 40 talks to me about anything to do with politics or government or budgets or anything.
Well, one last question. I know you've been putting up your hands there.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I know, I'm the elephant in the room here, guys. We need to talk about the data center a little bit today. I have quite a few issues with it. I live less than 2 miles, probably maybe a mile and a half from my house. I don't think it's right that this is happening, especially so close to the grade schools and the daycares and the churches and all that stuff. It's not the right location for it. I'm very upset that no studies are being done. And I don't know, I don't understand the part about, why can't they just go ahead and use studies from places where they've already built these data centers and seen what's happened to the neighborhoods and the areas around them and that kind of stuff? Why are they not looking into studies already? The $450,000 we all thought was supposed to go to study this situation, but instead it went to hiring a lawyer. That's another huge issue.
So, first of all, 3 years ago, did you know that Topeka passed your data center laws?
No,
And
we
did
did
all
not know.
these data center deals?
No.
3 years ago in Topeka.
We were told it was just last year, in
Yeah.
2025.
Well, look it up, it wasn't. So that's what I'm trying to say is all these things that you guys have problems with originate in Topeka
Under
and
the
it
table.
trickles downhill. We're told, hey, you guys are gonna get a data center. So now we gotta deal with it.
3 years ago?
So $450,000, the only thing we could really use that for right now, since there's not an application and there was a moratorium on, is legal advice. So that's what we went out and did. The surveys that you're talking about will come after the first permit. That's the normal process. It's not just for data centers. That's how all permits work. Until you have an application, you can't order a specific survey or something done for that. Yes, something too.
Well, I thought the agenda had a blue stem presentation coming up this week.
Yeah, moratorium.
Is that the start?
Yeah, moratorium expires, I think, next week or
Right.
something.
So is that the start of their request?
Yeah,
for
so as soon as we have an application, we don't even have an application yet, but as soon as we have one, then we can do the surveys and use that money for the studies and all that. But that doesn't mean that we're not already doing that. I know each commissioner, especially myself, have visited other data centers, we've called other places. I've talked to places all over the United States, talked to their appraisers. How's your real estate market after the data center came in? How's your bee population after the data center came in? How much noise does your data center make? How much water does your data center use? We're all working on all that already. And we're getting all kinds of information together for when we do get an application. So we're just waiting to get the application.
Will you be
to
able
see.
to tell us that information when the application gets brought in?
Sure.
So we start hearing what is actually happening?
Mhm.
I feel like if you guys accept an application, that's already a step that people think, okay, you're gonna get to.
For the data center, yeah. So, and I get a lot too, like, you guys signed NDAs and you're not telling us anything. I'm like, I don't even know what an NDA is. I've never signed an NDA. They're not asking us to sign NDAs because they don't need us to. Topeka's already made up their mind. You know who's behind these data centers? What you guys really need to do is find out who's really behind these data centers.
It goes further to
The
top, I'm
NSA,
sorry.
the NSA and the DOD contracted Meta to do these data centers. So they're coming. It's just where are they coming? That's what we gotta work out.
That's why I'm here. Where, this is the wrong location for this data center.
And it might be.
It is.
Yeah.
It's too close to the schools. And it's gonna harm our kids.
Yeah.
It's gonna harm a lot of people in our area.
And I'm not disagreeing with you. I can't have a predetermined idea of yes or no because I'm on a voting board. If I was to come out and say, no data center on my watch, you basically handed them the SUP because they will sue you in federal court because they didn't get a fair shake in the voting process. It's happened several times since I've been on the board.
I'm really sad, I hate saying that nowadays, everyone has to tiptoe around everything because everybody sues everybody.
Yep.
It's ridiculous that this
That's
happens.
the way of the world now.
And this whole,
If you have enough money and a good enough lawyer, you can do whatever
I
you
know,
want.
and it's not right. It
Yep.
shouldn't be, and it's all about money, and that's where it's all at right now,
But,
and it's not right.
but back to, like, the tax statements and everything I've been talking about, who do you get your tax bill from? The state? Nope, Leavenworth County. Who do you write your check to? The state? Nope, Leavenworth County. You write to the schools? Nope, Leavenworth County. But when you pay that to the county hands it to the school, and we hand it to the state, and we hand it to the township, and we hand it to the library. But everybody blames the county because the state has set this up for years. They've indoctrinated everybody to believe the messenger, that's all the county is. We're just the messenger. The messenger is the problem. So you're yelling at the wrong people. And I have a t-shirt that says, keep yelling at the wrong people and see if it gets fixed.
You
Doug, do you
left
have
one
something?
out, Jeff.
What's that?
The county also writes a check to developers who have RHIDs.
Yep, that too. That too. So I was against RHIDs. I don't know if you guys knew that.
One more question.
Sure.
Why can't we have an advisory vote on the data center?
Let me tell you my take on that. People think that elections work like it did in the third grade. Did you guys have a third grade teacher that said, I'm gonna teach you how elections work today? There's 30 kids in this class. We want some of you to vote no, some of you to vote yes. Wasn't even a question, just said, some of you vote no, some vote yes. They took all the tallies, they counted the 30 ballots for the 30 kids in that classroom. 17 said yes, 13 said no. So the teacher says, that's how elections work. The majority rules. So the answer is yes, because the majority said yes. Elections do not work like that in the real world. First of all, there's 90,000 people in Leavenworth County. Only 58,000 registered voters. Of the 58,000 registered voters, 20% I figure are dead. They don't update the voter register when people die or move away. They just remain on the voter list. So out of your 58,000 registered voters, when I first started as commissioner, I went to the high-rise building here in town and had 120 names from the clerk's office of registered voters in the high-rise building. It's the old folks home. I stopped at the county clerk or the clerk's desk and I said, I want to talk to these people. Can I just go to the room? She said, yeah, but only 40 people out of this 120 list are still alive. 80 people out of 120 on the voter registered list are dead. I went back to the clerk and I said, you gave me a list of dead people. And they said, well, the list is full of dead people. We don't update it. We do when we can. We try to pull the dead names off, but there's no one repository for all the death certificates that the clerk could just pull from to update the record. Some are at the newspaper, some are at the nursing home, or the funeral home, some are at the library. There's no one place to get this, so it's impossible to keep a clean voter record. So that's one problem. The other problem with an advisory vote is it's not binding. It's just a suggestion. It costs $60,000 to do an election.
Mike talked about that a few weeks ago, and it was only gonna be around $3,000.
Yeah, that's wrong. A full election is about 60 grand. This is a full election for the whole county. He was talking about maybe we get volunteers and maybe we could do this, maybe do that. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's 60 grand it would cost you to have this advisory vote. And the question, this is why I'm against you guys doing this. The question on the ballot is gonna be, can we cut your property taxes in half if we build a data center in Tonganoxie? That's the question.
Why would it have to be that question?
Because that's the issue. We're not gonna get into, they're gonna use all your water, they're gonna be noisy, or they're gonna give up
Do you want a
emails.
data center in your district? What's wrong with that question? Do you want a data center in your district, which we did at the fair just the other day?
So what do you think most people are gonna say when they see it'll cut our property taxes in half?
It's not gonna cut them in half.
The vote is gonna say, the question on the ballot is gonna say
I
that.
don't understand why you have to use that question.
That's the question, that's the big question, is how many people want their property tax cut in half and how many people don't want a data center? That's what it boils down to. So if you send a ballot to every person in Leavenworth County and ask them, can we cut your property taxes in half if we build a data center in
You won't
Tonganoxie?
though, that's a lie. You will not cut my property taxes in half. Mr. Lawfrey? I have the paper right here.
Come to the meeting Wednesday, and we hired an outside firm
I'll
to
be
run
there.
those numbers to see exactly what it will cut. And it's about half. So
Show
Wednesday,
this paper right here.
Yep,
200 your house is worth $250,000, and if you are in the county, which is what you guys are up here, and the town of Tonganoxie does not, and if they do annex it, if they do annex it, you will receive $87 a year in less property tax. This is Mr. Lawfrey's, right here.
yeah, that's not right.
Well,
How long ago did you get it to?
This was when they
First
first
came out.
talked about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a lot different now.
Because the facility has increased in size multiple amounts.
Yeah.
So
Plus-
he's saying, oh yeah, you're gonna get more taxes because this place is gonna be a lot bigger and
Yeah.
you're gonna be dealing with a lot more toxins and health issues, but your taxes, you are not gonna get less taxes, you're gonna get more costs and health issues. My health issues are gonna increase tenfold because I have genetic issues. I don't know if you all have heard me talk at the BOCC. I have genetic issues. I cannot be around these kind of toxins. I will have to sell my house and leave.
So you would want a ballot question to say, data center is bad. You can't do that on a ballot question.
I just want to know if you want a data center built in your district. That's my question.
They can't build them in most of the districts because they have to have at least a 500-acre tract. So why would we put on there in your district to every taxpayer? Some taxpayers can't have a data center in their district because there's not a parcel big enough. You see where I'm going with that? I'm just trying to help you guys. You don't understand how elections really work. First of all, it costs you 60 grand. It's only advisory, it's not binding. And the question on the ballot is not gonna go the way you think it will.
Okay. So everybody up here in the north would be fine with that because they think their taxes are gonna go down and they're okay with contaminating, polluting. I know you all think it's my opinion that it's gonna be toxic. It's not my opinion. I've been through it. I almost died 10 years ago from being exposed to a lot of toxins. And I know this is gonna be a very toxic situation. The gas turbines, the gas power plant, it's gonna be a huge, gigantic gas power plant built next to it. Actually, I think this whole thing is, we're gonna get a gas-powered power plant with a data center next to it. It's not right what they're trying to do in Tonganoxie or in Southern Lebanon County. It's not right. Sorry.
Sean,
No,
you
I'm
have
sorry,
one
we,
question?
we are over time.
Okay. Sean got one
I
quick
just had a
question.
quick question. If you guys presented with a petition about the data centers, how many signatures? Is that the only one that you've gotten, or is there any more?
From
It was
where?
like 530 or something this week.
That was my fair.
That's, I just want, I don't, is that the only one?
That's all that we've done. The county
I was just curious.
hasn't done. We've got 535 people come to our, I got it right here.
You know, the no data center grassroots effort, League of Women Voters kind of loves grassroots effort, because that's what we are. And I hope you guys continue to do what you do, to keep fighting what you're passionate about. But we need to give you this mug.